Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles. I'm a different man now in a different place, a new town, surrounded by unfamiliar faces, unfamiliar streets, new hangouts. Haven't spotted any familiar ones yet, but everything around me is brand new. And so am I. Just yesterday, Uncle Sam cut me loose. The base hospital where I spent a year healing, hurting, and recovering told me I was free to go on my own. Now, a new chapter. That morning, I took a cab to meet a guy who led me to his garage. Inside sat a well-worn 1992 Harley LHS, complete with a pair of oversized leather saddlebags. Back then, it wasn't called a Fat Boy yet, but it would be. The price was fair, so I handed over $7,500, strapped my modest belongings to the back, put on the helmet he gave me, and rode off toward the county tax office. An hour later, I had plates on the Harley. I hobbled crutch in hand next door to the driver's license bureau. At the counter, the officer gave me a long look and asked, "Just get out." I nodded, held up my discharge papers, and pointed to today's date. He gave me a nod and said, "Stand over there. I'll get you in right away." When the crowd started to complain, he snapped, "Quiet down if you want in." This man gave up a leg so you could keep living yours. He goes first, then he turned to me again, his voice lower. "Simplify." I smiled, answering just as quietly. The others didn't exist to me in that moment. I kept my face straight. The clerk took my paperwork and my military motorcycle safety certificate, keyed everything in, and handed over a Florida commercial chauffeur's license. It let me drive almost anything. I used the base as my address for now, temporary but serviceable. Next door was an insurance office. I stepped in to ask for a quote and left just as fast. Numbers like that could make a grown man choke. I pulled out a folded note with my next stop's address. 20 minutes later, I parked in front of what looked like an old motel, now converted into apartments. I rang the bell under the manager sign. A tall, heavy-set guy opened the door, grizzled cigar stub between his lips, wearing a sweat-stained tank top. He didn't say a word. Breaking the silence, I said, "Chad Johnson. I called about the furnished place you have." He grunted, grabbed a clipboard and a key ring, and walked across the lot. I limped behind, leaving the crutch behind this time. At apartment 22, he paused, looked me over, unlocked the door, and then, without a word, motioned for me to go inside. There was a small living room area and a small kitchen with a bar separating them. On the back wall were 3 doors. The door on the right was obviously a small bathroom, as I could see one of those metal shower stalls. The door to the left was the bedroom, as I could see a bed. The middle door was down a small hallway and appeared to lead outside. I looked into the bedroom and it was what I would expect. I looked into the bathroom and it wasn't bad, a sink, commode, and shower. I looked back at the living room and it had a chair, a small couch, and an ancient TV. The guy walked to the back of the apartment and opened the door that led outside. I looked out to see a covered patio that ran the length of the building. Under it was kids' trikes, a couple of bicycles, and I noticed some motorcycles there too. The man said, "You can park your bike back here. You get in over there between the buildings, but don't be revving up your bike at night. People have to sleep. It's safe back here. You might want to chain it up, but nobody will bother you. That last building on the right is the laundry building. You can use coins or get a card with credits for the washer and dryer. If you want someone to do your laundry for you, there's a bulletin board in there." I walked back to the living room and he held out the clipboard. "Fill this out and give me the first month plus 200 security. If you don't pay the next month's rent by the last day of the month, you're out of here. Your stuff will be outside in a box. No narcotics, no 304s working out of the apartment, and no shooting. I hate guns. I had enough of them when I was on the force. First time the cops come, I warn you. Next time your shit's in a box. You got the 550? I gave him the 350 rent and 2 bills for security. He counted the money and handed me back 150, saying, "I'll cut you some slack and only charge you half a month since it's already the 12th. Remember to get your money in by the last day of the month. Fill out that paper and bring it over before you move your bike." The big man gave me a crooked grin and walked out, heading back toward his apartment. After filling out the required information on the form, I walked back to the manager's apartment and rang the bell. I handed him the clipboard and he handed me some keys. He asked, "You a vet?" I nodded her in a rock. I nodded. He looked at me and said, "Thanks for what you did. Enjoy here, and I hope you don't have to live here forever." He gave me the crooked grin again and closed the door. I started the bike, rode it to in front of my apartment, and took my duffel bag in and unpacked it. I took out my little notebook and made a list of what I would need. I might have to make more than one trip. First, I needed to eat, buy some food, and get some civilian clothes. Instead of the crutch, I took my fancy aluminum cane and slid it into a saddlebag on the bike and headed down the street to where I had seen a grocery store. With the use of a cart, I picked up the necessary items I needed, including some more toothpaste and soap. I remembered some soap for the dishes, too. Since this was my first shot at the grocery store, I picked up some canned chili, canned stew, a couple of frozen dinners, a half-gallon of milk, salt, pepper, loaf of bread, and breakfast stuff, including eggs. To make me happy, I pulled a bag of chips and a six-pack of beer. I figured that I could get all this back to the apartment. Outside, I filled the 2 saddlebags with my purchases, with the flaps very loose as the bags were stuffed. Before I started the bike, I opened the fuel tank and looked inside. I saw metal. Damn, I looked at the fuel switch and it was already on the reserve setting. At the far end of the parking lot was a gas station, so I pushed the bike around so it was heading that way, and pushed the button. Thankfully, it ran all the way to the gas station. I filled it up with almost the whole 5 gallons before I took my groceries to the apartment, parking in the back next to my back door this time. I mentally almost called it home, but this wasn't home yet. The fridge and freezer were cold, so I put the stuff away and locked back up to head out for some lunch, then to find some clothes. The first place I found was a Hooters, and across the street, and down a ways was a Goodwill store. I had a taste for some spicy wings and beer, so I treated myself. Good stuff. Plus, the waitresses weren't too bad to look at either. Most of them filled out their Hooters tank tops very nicely. Next stop was the Goodwill store. These places are always in shambles. People pick through stuff and never put it back. Lots of clothes are sort of marked with the size, but you usually had better try it on. It took a half hour to find 4 pairs of jeans in my size and another half hour to find a pair of dress slacks. Shirts were easier as they all had the factory sizes marked in the collar. 2 hours after going in there, I had the clothes I thought I would need. I even found a pair of engineer boots and a pair of loafers in my size. My left foot had to fit right, but the right one could be too tight or too loose, as that was where the prosthetic leg was. The girl at the register smiled sweetly at me and noted that I was using a cane. She looked at me and asked, "You lose a leg?" When I nodded, she said, "My old man did too. He does pretty good, just like you." She rang me up, stuffed everything in a bag, then smiled and said, "That will be $7.35. I looked at her questioningly and she smiled again. We give discounts to vets. When she rolled her eyes, I knew she was giving me a personal discount. I paid, said thank you, and left. Outside, I stuffed my clothes into the saddlebags, rode back to the apartment, and parked behind my place. I took my stuff inside before I walked to the laundry room. There were 3 notes about doing laundry, so I picked the one that said Apartment 25. I would have chosen that anyway, as the handwriting was neat. I walked back over to the back door to 25 and knocked on the door. A lady, probably in her 30s, came to the door. She really looked beat, but smiled and asked, "You have laundry you need done, honey." I nodded. "Bring it over so I can see what you have. I don't charge much, but it still costs for the machines. Go get it, okay?" I nodded and went to my place, got the stuff together, and went back to where she had come out of her apartment and was sitting in a lawn chair by her back door. She looked at the stuff and said, "Brand from Goodwill, huh?" While she looked through the clothes, I checked her out a little better. She was probably closer 5 feet 5 inches than 35 and maybe 110. Thin but not bony. She was wearing an old, loose, unbeat-head shirtwaist dress that didn't reveal her shape, but you could tell she had some up top and a decent backside. I'm a typical guy, so it took a while to get to her face. She had a lot of lines, so I may be underestimating the age of a bit, probably closer to 40. Her hair was a mousy blonde that didn't look dyed. There was some gray mixed in, so the lady was no spring chicken. She smiled and nodded as she looked through each piece. "They have all the buttons and the zippers work, so you made out. You did a good job selecting stuff. Is this all?" I nodded. She looked at me with her version of a crooked smile and asked, "You talk?" "Yes, ma'am, when I need to." Quiet one, huh? Okay, I'll wash and iron all these for you and starch these good pants and shirts for $10. Is that all right? I nodded. I'll have them for you this evening. Okay, I smiled and said, "Thank you." She asked, "That your bike?" Pointing at my Harley, I nodded. "You're safe back here, but you need to chain it up with a good lock." When I frowned, she said, "I'll let you use my old man's. He left last month and hasn't been around, so I'm guessing you can use it till you get one of your own. He's usually gone 2 months before he misses me." She went inside and came out carrying a heavy chain and a big padlock with a key stuck in it. "Thanks," I said as she handed me her chain and lock. I chained and locked the bike to the metal pole under the overhead cover and went inside to relax. This was the most activity I'd had outside in a year, and I was tired. I flipped the TV on and was rewarded with a good picture. There was a small remote, so I began flipping through channels. Amazing. The place had cable, so I found a decent old movie and settled down to watch it. There was banging on the back door. I had been sleeping, so this startled me. I got up and hobbled to the door to find the lady from next door holding my clothes. I opened the door and took the clothes from her one hand, but she still had some clothes on hangers that she was holding up. I motioned for her to come in, set the clothes down that I had taken from her, then took the hanging pair of pants and shirts. After putting my stuff in the bedroom, I came back into the living room area to find her sitting on one of the 2 bar stools at the counter. "You washed the sheets on that bed yet?" she asked. I shook my head. "You better let me run them through real quick before you use them." "You never know. Let me wash the spread and blanket as well. The manager has a good cleanup crew, but you never know." I nodded and went into the bedroom to strip the bed. There were 2 sheets, 2 pillowcases, a bedspread, and a blanket. I brought them back into the living room and put them on the couch. She went over and smelled the sheets. "Musty. They've been around for a while without being washed. Give me a 5 and I'll get them washed right away." I pulled out a 5, saying, "I'll carry them over for you if you want." "That's okay. I'll do it. I need to wash some other stuff at the same time. I'll just put it all in a basket and carry it over. If you want to know, I get my stuff washed while I do for others. It's kind of cheating, but it's how I get by. If you want me to clean your place, I can do that too. If you need a companion, a bed warmer at night, I can do that when my old man isn't in town. I do what I have to do." I nodded, thinking she wasn't bottle-looking and she might be worth an evening. I'd bet she was the kind that wouldn't freak out over no right leg below the knee when she saw the stub. She left and I looked at my watch. It was already 6 o'clock, so I had slept for a couple of hours. I took out a TV dinner and a beer. I didn't have a microwave, so I had to warm up the oven. While that was going on, I checked to find dishes, flatware, and some pots and pans. There wasn't a lot, but enough to get by. While I was waiting for the stove to warm, I noticed the lady carrying her basket to the laundry room. She would take a while to do everything, and my 5 would barely cover the machines and soap. I figured on tipping her 5 when she brought my stuff back. I ate while watching the local and national news on the local cable channel. It was spring, part of Florida's dry season. It was pretty nice out, so it was nice to be able to have the front and back doors open to let a breeze go through. Funny, for most of this last year, I had made all my plans on what I was going to do when I was on my feet. Or is that foot and out of that damned hospital? Now that I was out, I was a little scared, uncertain, not sure of myself like I usually was. Well, I bought a bike, rented a place, bought some clothes, and I'd fed myself. Now I have to find a job. I have a list of places to check, but from what the news is saying over and over again is that there aren't any jobs. I could get along on my VA benefit and some assistance, and I know I was eligible for food stamps. I was eligible for housing too, but I didn't want to live in a project. I just wouldn't fit. I need to find a job of some kind. Hopefully I can find a driving job or fall back to what I learned in trade school before the Marines. Welding. Tom will tell. I was at the counter when there was banging on the back door again, and a voice called out, "It's sure." "I've got your bed clothes." I hopped down and made it to the door. When I tried to take them from her, she pushed past me and went to the bedroom with them. I tried to start helping her, and she said, "Go in there and open me one of those beers and let me do this." Okay, I know when to listen. I went to the fridge and took out 2 cold ones. There were still 2 left. That was plenty, or so I thought. She came in, pushing her hair back from her sweaty face. I handed her an opened can of beer, and she handed it back to me and took the one that had not been opened yet. She opened it and took a couple of big gulps from it. She sort of watched me closely until I drank from the beer she had handed back to me. She smiled and took another big swig from the can. Ah, hits the spot. Thanks. I nodded but had to ask. You said Sure was at the door. Is that short for something? Glad you asked. Yes, the name is Shirley McGiver. If you're wondering, it's my maiden name, too. Never married, but I've had the same old man for 20 or so years. I took out my wallet and handed her a 5, saying, thank you. Shirley McGiver, you've been a big help. What's this for? If it's for bed warming, I think I'm worth more than that. If it's a tip, I should have been doing this as a welcome service, but thank you very much. I was smiling and slowly shaking my head at her forwardness. Shirley stretched a little. You new here? New in town. I looked at her and wondered how much I should tell her. I just got out of service, but have been out at the base for the last year. Then you know Tampa pretty well? Shirley said. Don't know it at all. This is the first time I've been off base. She frowned. What the hell you been doing out there that you haven't been in town now is? Or get off the pot time. My cane was next to me, so I picked it up and banged it on my prosthetic a couple of times and said, it took a while to get this fitted and to figure out how to walk with it. She squinted at me, then very matter-of-factly said, so you lost the leg? Just one or both? How high? Just one below the knee. Shirley nodded, then said, let me see. I pulled up the leg of my pants all the way to the knee. Good job. Looks like whoever made this knew what they were doing. My brother lost a leg and a foot. He gets around pretty good. Doesn't hardly use a crutch or cane. If he's feeling poorly, he uses a walker. Shirley pushed my pant leg down and said, since you haven't been out and about for a long, long time, want me to show you the places to go? That would be nice. Give me 10. Make it 15 minutes. I gotta take a shower, get your bike unchained, and we'll be gone. If you have a jacket, you might need it tonight. It's getting cooler out there. I thought to myself, what the hell? I guess I'm ready for the world. She thinks so. Should I ride her? I haven't ridden in 5-6 years, and should she trust me 2 up? I went in the bedroom and pulled out my old leather jacket. It wouldn't do in real cold weather, but it would do okay without a liner in this weather. I should put that on my list. Come to think of it, there were some decent leathers at the Goodwill store. I'll have to check them out. I locked up the front and shut off the lights, but left the back porch light on. About the time I had the chain off and the bike turned around with the gas on the main tank and not reserved. Shirley came out of her place locking the door. She didn't have a helmet and I only had mine. So I offered her my helmet. She took it and set it by my door. We don't need those anymore in Florida. When you go out, make a left. I'll tell you after that. Shirley wore jeans and a tank top under an open leather jacket. Her hair was pulled back into a ponytail. And somehow, in just 15 minutes, she looked years younger. You could tell she'd been riding for a long time. She moved naturally with the bike, leaning with me smoothly and without tension. She kept talking, giving directions. Turn left. Go straight. Watch for the bar up on the left. We pulled into a small bar tucked behind a row of buildings. Bikes lined up out of view from the street. You'll be fine in here. No club types. I'll just tell them you're my new neighbor. All right, just a neighbor. Most of these folks know my old man. Tonight's not exactly the best time to be out meeting new people, but hey, you never know. The moment we stepped inside the loud bar, the noise shifted toward us. People started shouting, Sure, where you been? You nut? Who's this guy? Someone you dragged in off the street? Hey, buddy, getting the full tour or what? Shirley didn't skip a beat. She landed a solid punch to the loudest one's gut as she walked by. He's my new neighbor. Genius. I'm showing him around. Oh, sure. The guy coughed. Showing him the neighborhood, huh? Maybe what it costs to look around. Shirley stopped cold. She snatched the bottle from his hand, swung it in a sharp arc against the corner of the bar. It shattered, leaving only the neck in her grip and jagged glass aimed at his throat. You better watch your mouth, she growled. One more word, and you'll be leaking all over this floor. A mammoth came up behind Shirley, grabbed her hand with the beer bottle, and at the same time picked the loud mouth up by the belt of his pants. The huge hand on her wrist slid up smoothly, taking the jagged bottle from her hand. Out you go, Jerry. Your mouth got the best of you tonight. Come back tomorrow after your mother has washed it out for you. You keep this up and you'll be treated like any kid and be grounded. Now get! As the mammoth said this, he pushed open the back door and actually pitched the guy out into the parking lot. Funny, the loudmouth didn't say a word to the big man. Shirley looked at me and noticed that I had leaned back against the pool table and had the 6 ball in my hand. Put it down. The guys playing pool would miss the ball. Besides that, I don't think you could knock Jonah out with only a pool ball. The mammoth came back to us and stuck out his giant hand. I'm Jonah. Sorry you had to hear that. Let me get you a beer on the house, and thanks for not hitting me with that damn pool ball. Those things knock the piss right out of you. Shirley laughed and said, Jonah, this is my new neighbor, Chad. He just got out of the service and I'm showing him around. Jonah looked at me and reached up to touch a patch sewn on my jacket. You a Marine? I nodded. Sympathy? Jonah said as he grabbed me in a bear hug. I choked out at Euro while trying to get my breath. Hell, let's all 3 get a beer and I'll introduce you around. Jonah and Shirley introduced me to what seemed like a crowd of people, but it was probably only about 30 or so. The place wasn't that big. While we were near the front door, a tall, confident woman walked in. She wasn't dressed in biker attire, but instead wore a short, elegant evening gown. She had an impressive presence, standing at least 66 or 7 feet tall and easily weighing over 300 pounds. She had a commanding aura, and I couldn't help but notice her. Shirley saw me looking and said, Easy there. She's already taken. Jonah chuckled and said, Hey, for a fellow Marine, I'll share the fun. It takes a Marine to handle someone like her anyway. Hey, Millie, come over here and meet the guy who's clearly impressed by you. Millie walked over to Jonah and with a grin pulled his head toward her. Go ahead, take it all in, she teased. Millie gave him a playful shove and turned to me, narrowing her eyes. So, you're the new guy? Surely you keeping him busy. Before Shirley could respond, Jonah chimed in. She's just showing him around, giving him the tour. In a dramatic voice, Millie said, Well, I'm definitely a side, aren't I, darling? Shirley laughed. Trust me, he's probably more interested than he's letting on. When I frowned at the comment, Millie lifted me effortlessly and pulled me into her space, giving me a friendly kiss on the cheek. Don't mind us, sweetie, we just like to enjoy life, Jonah added. I was going to suggest he join us later, Millie, but looks like you've already got him intrigued. Millie gently sat me down and gave me a playful pat on the shoulder. There's plenty of fun ahead. Don't worry, you'll see. Shirley leaned toward me and whispered, Well, Tampa is going to feel pretty quiet after this. We finally got our beer, but Millie and Jonah invited us back to his office where he offered some drinks. Millie relaxed in a comfortable chair, casually settling in. She was confident, laughing with Jonah, and it was clear that she had her own unique way of enjoying life. Shirley, shaking her head, said, Millie, you're certainly not shy. You're a character. Millie responded with a grin. No need for modesty, sweetie. I'm just giving him a taste of the fun. Jonah laughed and said, Chad, she's all woman. You can see that as soon as she walked in. There's no one like Millie. Millie, Jonah said, this guy is a Marine, so if you're going to give up some leg, he should be the candidate. Millie smiled. I'll stick to what I know is good and tease the rest. You don't mind me teasing you a little, do you, Chad? I nodded. He don't talk much either, does he? Millie directed that to Shirley. So far, he ain't a talker. We'll take him home and enjoy him. He might use that mouth for something better. We went back out to the bar and enjoyed the crowd for a while. Shirley grabbed my wrist and looked at my watch. Come on, let's get home. I might get a call between now and 1. That's when he calls when he does. I'd like to be there for him if he does call. I said goodbye to Jonah and got a bear hug and smooch from Millie. She whispered in my ear. Jonah said we could get together. Ditch your babe and see Jonah. If he says you're good for it, I'm ready. Honey, just name the time, she teased. I think Shirley and I left while I was still gawking at the huge, luscious Millie. At home, I chained up the bike while Shirley went next door. I had just gone inside when Shirley came back carrying a portable phone. If he calls, I can answer it over here as well as at home. You have any more beer left? I opened the last 2 beers and handed her one. Shirley pointed toward the back of the buildings. Right between those buildings is a liquor store. They have cold beer too. They're open till 2 if you want to get some more beer or some booze. I nodded, then asked, "Do you want some liquor? Something besides beer?" "Not really, but that Jack tasted pretty good tonight. We shouldn't drink too much of that stuff, though. It'll knock you out." I left walking as fast as I could on my good and bad foot. I picked up a 12-pack and a fifth of Jack Daniels. When I walked in the door, Shirley was on her phone and held up a finger to her mouth to be quiet. "Why can't you come home now?" "Honey, you've been gone over a month. I miss you, baby. I need you around." A long pause. "Come home. There's probably as much work around here as anywhere." Another pause. "Whatever you say, honey. Just come home soon, okay? If you don't come home soon, I'm going to have to hunt up someone to scratch my itch. Now get home before I get desperate. And if you can, send me a couple of bucks." "Okay." Another pause. "You know, I'm not working and can barely make ends meet." There was a very long pause. "Okay, honey. Love you." I could see her now just looking at the phone before pushing the hang-up button. A big tear rolled down her cheek and dropped onto the phone. Shirley raised her head, sniffing back the rest of the tears. "Good. You bought some booze. I could use a little of that along with another beer." While I poured the drinks and opened a couple of bottles, Shirley moved around the house with purpose, pulling the curtains closed, lowering the shades, turning off the lights, and cracking open a window in the bedroom. Once the back door was locked, she returned, picked up her glass, and downed the strong pour in one go before taking a long sip of her beer. "Ah, hits the spot," she said. "That son of a gun is in Spokane, Washington. What the hell is he doing up there? I recognize the area code. He's a sandblaster, and there aren't any big ships in Spokane." She sat on the couch and began letting her hair down. "Damn, he could get steady work around here or on the Gulf Coast, but he always ends up chasing jobs across the country. I know why he never has money. He's too busy wasting it. Always running around, never grounded. One of these days, I won't be waiting here anymore." Shirley looked like she was on the edge of tears. She didn't break down completely, but the pain in her eyes was clear. I wasn't sure if it was my place to comfort her, but everything in me wanted to ease her pain. It seemed like she'd been carrying this for a long time. She glanced up and patted the empty spot on the couch beside her. "I won't bite. Come sit with me. I could really use a hug." I sat down and she leaned in gently, resting her head on my shoulder. It was quiet, just the two of us sharing the kind of moment where words aren't really needed. Shirley pulled back a little and offered a small smile. "You're kind. It means a lot right now." We sat there sharing a few quiet laughs, small words, and the kind of closeness that wasn't about romance or expectation. It was about comfort. Eventually, she led me to the bedroom where we both needed rest after an emotional day. We lay there side by side, the tension of the day slowly easing away as I drifted off to sleep with her arms wrapped around me. She whispered, "Just sleep. I want you to stay close tonight." That's how my first day out on my own began. A complicated day, yes, but one that ended with a reminder that even in the middle of loss and loneliness, connection still matters. I woke this morning to kisses on my neck and back. I flipped over to see Shirley smiling at me. "Did you sleep good, baby?" "Did you?" I smiled. Shirley hugged me to her full front, feeling my morning erection poking into her. "Do you need to use the bathroom?" "I did already. Go and come back." "Okay." I went to the John and came back to find Shirley holding up the covers for me to crawl in next to her. We kissed and hugged until my part A found her slot B, and we proceeded to have a long, enjoyable session. When we were laying there in our juices, Shirley said, "How about that? I didn't even give you a chance to buy some happy time with me. I just gave it away." It was worth it, though. You really made me feel good. I want more of this, so rest up, Chad. I think we need to do some more exploring. We got up and washed off in the tiny metal shower stall. I only had the one big towel, but it was enough for this morning. I needed to put towels on my list. I told Shirley to sit at the counter and I would fix us breakfast. She asked, "What are you going to fix?" "How about bacon, eggs, and toast?" "Would that do?" "That would be great, but you're not making it. I'm the cook when I'm around. If you have coffee, make it. I'll do breakfast." Thank goodness I had bought coffee and was able to find the old-fashioned drip pot. I made a pot of strong coffee, and surprisingly, by the time the pot had brewed, Shirley was putting plates of food on the table. We each had 4 pieces of bacon. She had 2 eggs, but had made me 3. We ate heartily until she pushed herself back and said, "Damn, that's the first good meal I've had in a week. Sure is nice to have a neighbor that feeds me. I'm going to take your 5 and go to the grocery later today." I frowned. You can't buy much with a 5. "Surely bet me," she said. "I can get a bunch of rice that will last me several days. I'll get some beef base or chicken base to flavor the rice and live good until I can get some more money ahead. You're going to need to wash your sheets again, so I'm ahead already. Perhaps I can help you keep getting them dirty. Maybe you didn't get a freebie after all." While I was laughing, she said, "Never tell anyone we did that." "Okay, I don't want my man to find out, even though he is such a jerk." "I love him, Chad, but I did enjoy fooling around with you. We'll do some more, but don't tell anyone." I nodded. Well, I got to collect everyone's laundry and get started. I like to get that stuff done before noon. "I'll talk to you later, okay?" I nodded as she gave me a quick kiss on the way out the door. I opened the front door to let the breeze flow through the apartment and cleaned up the kitchen. I gathered up the empties to take them out the back to the opening between the buildings where I had seen a dumpster. Back home, Shirley was in the bedroom stripping my sheets. She said, "I'll do yours with a 304 stuff, Wanda, down on the end." She has 4 or 5 sets of sheets every day. She works out of her place, so she has lots of laundry. There are 2 other working girls out here, but they do their own laundry. I don't think they have as much traffic as Wicked Wanda does. I made another pot of coffee and began listing more food to get. I wasn't going to let Shirley go without good food. Whether or not she spends the night, she was going to eat. I needed a phone, so I should pick up one of those pay-as-you-go cell phones. Next, I needed to consider what I didn't really want. I needed to get a car or pickup to use to look for a job. People weren't going to like me riding up on my bike to get a job. I needed to get a computer of some kind or find a library so I could get my email. My cousin and my aunt were all I had as far as relatives, and I wanted to stay in touch with them. Besides, I needed the email to stay in touch with my guys who were over in Afghanistan this time. I walked over to the manager's apartment and rang the bell. The big guy came to the door in what looked like the same clothes from yesterday, still chewing on the cigar. "What do I want? Do you have wireless internet out here?" I think they heard him laugh in Orlando. "I'll tell you what, though. Somebody has cable Roadrunner with a wireless router. I'm using it, so if you link up, you're gold. Just don't cook the goose." "Okay," I nodded. "If you want private internet hookup, you can order it from the cable company." I nodded again and left. I locked up the apartment, found Shirley, and gave her a key while asking if she personally knew of anyone who sold cars or trucks. She said, "Go by Jonas. He knows everyone, and he'll steer you right." I rode over to the small bar and went inside. The bartender, a bottle blonde, was behind the counter, and Jonah was sitting in a booth at the back going through some books. I waved off the bartender and went straight to Jonah. Jonah looked up as I approached and said, "How's it going, my man?" "What brings you out this morning? I need to buy a car or pickup. Do you know anyone I can deal with? How about an S10? I know someone with a 95 model that runs great. He's not asking much, and he might go lower because he needs the money." "You know him too? He was talking a lot last night." "Jerry?" I nodded. "Let me call him. He lives just around the corner. We can walk over and take a look." Jonah made the call, and we walked just around the corner to meet Jerry, who was dressed casually in jeans, no shirt, and no shoes. He held up the keys and said, "Take it around the block a couple of times, then we'll talk." Jonah and I got in with me driving. I started it up and let it idle for a minute. listening while it warmed up. I flipped on the air and cold air came out. I put it in gear, dropped the handbrake, and felt the clutch as we pulled away. I slowly accelerated, shifted into second, third, and fourth, but never reaching fifth gear. The clutch felt good and the motor sounded smooth. I rolled down the window to listen while I used the brakes to slow me down to a stop. We drove back to Jerry's place and he now had shoes and a shirt on. Jerry asked, "What do you think?" "What kind of deal can you make, Jerry? I think I should be able to get $3,500 out of it." I looked at Jerry, then Jonah, and said, "Let's go," and began walking off. "Hey, where are you going?" Jerry called. "You don't want to sell the truck, do you?" "Sure I do. I have to sell it. I have a new one and I don't want to have to buy insurance for this anymore." "I'll give you $1,000. "Take it or leave it," I said coldly and turned again to walk. "That ain't enough. You have to come up with more." I kept walking. "Hey, come back." "I'll tell you what. How about $2,000? I kept walking now. Jerry was following us. "Come on, deal with me." I stopped and said in the same even tone, "I'll give you $1,000 for the truck. I think that's more than fair." Jerry kicked rocks around a couple of seconds, then said, Okay, I'll take the $1,000. It's got to be worth more in that, though. You don't have to sell it to me, Jerry. I'll keep looking. I'll find something for around $1,000 that will be equal to your truck." "Enough." "Okay, do you have the money? Do you have the title?" We traded cash for title, and I drove Jonah back to the bar. "Good job," Jonah said. And that's the way to bargain with that jerk. "Actually, you paid what the truck is probably worth, but good job anyway." We pulled my bike to the back of the bar to be safe while I took off to take care of the registration. I drove toward the tag office again, but I was watching for insurance offices on the way. I pulled into a house with a big State Farm sign. 30 minutes later, I had insured the bike and the truck and was on my way to register the truck. When I drove home, I went through my place and over to Shirley's and knocked on her door. She came to the door in another of her shapeless shirtwaist dresses. I asked her, "Do you have a driver's license?" She smiled. "Yeah, I got one, but haven't driven for a year or so. Do you think you could drive a pickup back from Jonas?" Shirley smiled again. "I could. Where did you get a pickup truck?" "Jerry had one he needed to sell, so we made a deal." "At least that prick has something of value," Shirley spit out. "Did you slap him a couple of times to make a deal?" "It was a fair deal." "When could you go over there with me? Would now be good?" Shirley nodded. "Now would be good." "Let me get my purse and lock up. Do you have your bike or the pickup in front?" I nodded, saying pickup, before Shirley went into her house, closing her door. We met in front of the apartments, and I opened the passenger door for her to get in the truck. She said, "Thank you." That's gentlemanly to do that. I nodded and got in to drive to the bar. Not having thought of it, I asked Shirley, "Do you know how to drive a standard shift?" "Yeah, I can do that. That's all I've really ever driven." Inside the bar, we had the daytime barmaid give us each a beer. We drank our beer and munched on some free peanuts. While we were sitting there, I asked Shirley, "Would you do me a favor?" She looked at me wearily, but said, "What you need?" "I can cook for myself, but not very good. I'm going to get tired of frozen dinners pretty quick. You did breakfast real good. So how about we make a deal? I'll take you to the grocery store and you pick out the stuff we would need to eat for, say, a week. Get enough for our evening meals and some stuff for lunch, like lunch meat and soup or something like that. I guess we should include more breakfast stuff, too. Then the deal is you cook and I'll pop for the food. This way we both get a decent meal." "What do you think?" Shirley grinned and frowned at the same time. "You trying to make a welfare case out of me or trying to find a live-in?" "No, neither one." "Speaking of welfare, you know I need to go to the aid office for food stamps." "I'll bet I'm more than eligible." "You might be, too. I think I can file for unemployment now, too. With my VA benefit, unemployment plus food stamps, it might be enough to carry me through for a while." Shirley asked, "You really going to ask for food stamps?" "Sure, why not? We can get all of our staples and fresh food items with them. I've paid my taxes, so I might as well get some benefit until I can get regular work." I ain't exactly rolling in money, and I've spent a lot yesterday and today. I figured I needed the truck for transportation to work if I get a dress-up job. I'm not going to be too picky, though, so I'll take anything I'm physically capable of doing. I asked her again, would you be willing to barter? I'll buy, you cook, we both eat. Yes. If you feed me, I might even get some meat on these bones. Shirley said it'll be a good deal for me so I can save all my laundry money for rent. We finished our beer and I gave her the truck keys before I went out the back to take the bike back in front. I told Shirley, let's stop at the store on the way home and get a couple of days' food. I'll go to the aid office tomorrow. They might get me started out fast since I'm an ex-GI. We bought the bare essentials, but it looked to be enough to feed both of us for a couple of days. Since it was now getting towards supper, Shirley said she would cook up supper now and finish her laundry afterward. She cooked some spaghetti and meatballs. We had a salad before and some canned peas to go with it. It was a decent meal. When we finished, I motioned for her to go do her stuff, and I would clean up. There was enough left over to put in the refrigerator for lunch tomorrow for at least one of us. When I was done, I walked back to the laundry room to see if anyone had left a newspaper back there. There was one, so I waved Shirley and carried the classified section back to the apartment. There were not many jobs available, but there were some driving jobs. I couldn't do deliveries because I probably couldn't pick up much over 70 or 80 pounds. I had found out in rehab that it hurt like hell to try to carry too much. There were some over-the-road jobs, but I didn't want to do that. As far as skilled labor, there wasn't anything there either. I was looking at the welding trade as I know I can do that. Nothing. Maybe the unemployment people would have some listings. I browsed the rest of the ads and wondered what it would be like to sell cars or to work in an office as a truck dispatcher or this one that was a 911 operator. In the medical area, there were some jobs listed for the Veterans Hospital. I'll bet I would get some preference for out there. I was going to have to go out there anyway, so I might as well ask while I'm there. I made a list. Unemployment office, welfare office, Veterans Hospital. Shirley knocked on the door and walked in wearing a terry cloth robe with her hair wrapped in a towel. Got a beer for your cook? I nodded and pulled 2 cans from the fridge. While I was doing that, Shirley pulled out a small chocolate cake from the fridge with what looked like creamy icing on it. Want some dessert? I got this cake for us. We ate cake, drank our beer, and discussed my list and what I had found in the classifieds. The woman said, "You're going to busy tomorrow. You best go to bed early. What say I give you a nice massage to put you to sleep? If I stay here, it'll be faster for me to make breakfast for you in the morning." I smiled and went to brush my teeth before bed. By the time I had finished getting ready, Shirley had already closed up the place and opened the windows. She was sitting on the bed with the sheet and spread turned back, brushing her hair. I changed into my undershirt and shorts and laid down on the bed. "You didn't wear shorts to bed last night. Is that how you're planning to sleep?" she asked. I looked at her, gave a half smile, and slipped them off, tossing them toward the closet before lying back down on my stomach. Shirley began gently massaging my back with some kind of oil. The longer she worked, the deeper her hands dug, methodically loosening each muscle group. She worked down my back, over my legs, and all the way to my feet. Then she gave me a playful pat and said, "Roll over. I was so relaxed it took effort to move." She continued the massage, starting from my feet and working up to my shoulders and chest. "You've been working out a lot," she said. "You'll have to find a gym or a Y nearby to stay in shape." I was so at ease that when she moved around, I didn't even open my eyes. "That was wonderful," I said, turning my head to kiss her forehead. I reached over, gently cupped her chin, and kissed her again. A warm, grateful kiss. She smiled and sat beside me, her hair falling around us like a curtain. "It means something that you'd kiss me like that," she said quietly. I kissed her again, expressing thanks not just for the massage, but for everything, her care, her presence, her calm. We eventually laid back together, Shirley curled up beside me, her head resting on my shoulder. In a minute, we were both asleep. The next morning, I was up, showered, fed, and on the way to the unemployment office by 7 o'clock. I found the place easier than I thought I would. It didn't open until 8 o'clock, so I stood by the door using my aluminum cane to lean on. Several people came up to the door and rattled it. When I pointed to the sign with my cane that gave the hours, they each cursed, turned, and walked away. My thought was, no sense in leaving if this was where you needed to be. When the door opened, I spotted a take a number machine. So I pulled the first tab available and stood by an aisle as I thought I would be called first. No such luck. My number was 173 and the number called was 151. An older man in work clothes got up and went to the window. I had not thought that people from the day before had numbers and were going to be waiting this morning. Nothing left to do but sit down and wait. With 8 workers interviewing applicants, it only took 45 minutes to be called. After explaining my position, the lady handed me a stack of forms and told me to fill them out and bring them back to her. I only needed to come up and stand near her window, and she would help me as soon as the person she was working with left. It took over a half hour to fill out all of the forms. Once the woman was helping me again, she said I might not be eligible for benefits, as I was receiving a benefit from the Veterans Administration. She went to check with her supervisor, came back to tell me that I was entitled to unemployment benefits, and would receive my first check 2 weeks from the date of my discharge. When she acted as if I were dismissed, I asked, "Don't you folks also help unemployed people find a job?" Most of the information I just filled out is like a job application. She looked at me as if I had a big pimple on my nose, then said, "Do you really want to find a job?" "Yes, ma'am, I do. If you look at the forms, I do have several qualifications that would suit me to many jobs." When I was looking at the classified ads last night, there weren't any that looked like I would be qualified for. "Let me assign you to a career counselor so you can be guided in the right direction." The lady picked up her phone, spoke a few minutes, and wrote a name and number on a pad. She tore off the top piece of paper from the pad and handed it to me. "Please go to the 3rd floor and speak with Lorna Williams in room 312. Miss Williams is a career counselor for military personnel re-entering the workforce." I nodded, smiled, and made my way toward a sign that said, "Elevator." Room 312 had a closed door, so I knocked on the door and waited for someone to grant me entry. I knocked again, but much louder, and waited again, listening. A short, fat little man with Coke bottle glasses opened the door next to the 312 and said, "Lorna is not here. She just left on break. If you will come back in a half hour, she should be back." I looked up and down the hallway and didn't see any chairs and didn't remember any in the elevator vestibule. I decided to just stand there and wait, thinking that it was pretty rude to know someone is on their way up to see you and to take off like that. 45 minutes later, the little fat man came out of his office and looked at me. "Did you just come back or have you been here all this time?" I didn't answer but waited, listening for what he had to say. He raised his eyebrows and said, "You must have missed her as she came back from her break, but just left for the day to take care of personal business." You know the feeling a cross between anger, disappointment, and frustration. It makes you shiver with the cold anger that swirls through your body. I nodded, then went to the elevators and went back to stand at the clerk's window I had been served at originally. When the person she had been helping left, she asked me what the problem was. After explaining what had just transpired, she picked up her phone and made a call. While she was talking, I could see her face turned red as she became perturbed. I heard her ask, "Where the hell are you?" "You're not in your office as a man with a bad leg. And Kane waited for you to come back from your break. How did I just call you? And where the hell are you?" The worker listened for a few minutes before slamming the phone down. She pointed her finger at my side of the counter and said, "You stay right where you are. I have to see my supervisor." Less than 5 minutes later, another lady came to the window with the worker and said, "Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry you had to wait for someone that wasn't present. Could you give us your phone number and we will call you with an appointment time?" I closed my eyes and opened them slowly. I don't have a phone and probably can't afford one for a while, or at least until I can get a job. I need to work to feed myself. I used most of my exit money to rent a place to live, purchase transportation, and some clothes from Goodwill so I can get a job and have a way to get to it. Please, do you by any chance have a job for someone right here? The supervisor looked at me funny. Would you work here in an office helping unemployed people? It's not the best place in the world to work. I wasn't trying to be a wise guy, but I had to ask, do you get paid? Do you have a nice home with a telephone? She almost frowned, then smiled and asked, "Can you type?" I nodded. "Would you take an aptitude and typing test?" I nodded again. The lady laughed and said, "Perhaps you need to have a talking examination instead of a typing test. Come with me. Go to the far end where there is a gate, and come through there." The supervisor had garnered my stack of forms that I had filled out and led me to a small conference room. She seated me, left, and returned with a file folder. She handed me 3 number 2 pencils and a group of forms and said, "Please take your time and answer each of these questions to the best of your ability. This is an aptitude questionnaire. It is designed to identify your most effective work areas. There is no time limit. If you need to use the restroom, there is one out this door and to your right. There is also a drinking fountain there. Please see me in my office when you're finished. It is the first door on your left." There were 6 sheets of paper with questions on each side. The print was very small and a little smudged. If you didn't have good eyesight, it would be impossible to complete the forms. There were no trick questions, but they did ask the same thing in different ways, about 10 times for every question. It took an hour and 15 minutes to complete all the questions. It was now 11:50 and people would be going to lunch. I went next door fully expecting the supervisor to be gone to lunch. The door was open, so I knocked on the door jamb. She looked up and said, "Come in." She held her hand out for the papers and said, "Please sit for a minute." While sitting, I watched as she took a form with holes in it and began counting where I had filled in the little box. Her desk was reasonably neat with some file folders and a pad. There was a large name display. It said Meddy White. I had to smile as May White was a very, very dark-skinned lady. She was in what should she be called now? African-American Black. To me, she was just a person, so she was just Miss White. It seemed to take as long to grade and define the test as it did to take it. She looked up and asked, "Are you familiar with a computer keyboard?" I nodded. "Yes, ma'am would do better than a nod, Mr. Johnson." "Yes, ma'am." She chuckled. "Please have a seat at the computer to your right. Turn it on, and when it finishes booting, I'll tell you the program to use. One thing the Marines do have is computers. They have computers in the barracks, computers in the library, computers in the day rooms, even computers in the chow hall. If you didn't know how to boot up a computer and read directions, you would never know what you were assigned to do from day to day." Upon boot up, I asked and was told what program to use. Ms. White told me to put on the headset and use the mouse to start the test. She said the first one would be to let me warm up, and the second would be the time to vent. Hallelujah. I had done something right in high school. I had taken 2 computer classes. The first semester was only typing. Next, we learned how various programs worked. Upon completing the typing test, a full screen came on with the number 96 flashing on the screen. When I turned to advise Miss White, she was already looking and said, "Hit escape." She paused and gave me another program to find. There wasn't a screen icon for it, so I had to go to the XP program list to find it. Once I had the program booted, Miss White reached over my shoulder and asked me to enter the information she had derived when she graded my aptitude questionnaire. This took almost 15 minutes. I clicked on the submit icon and a printer next to Ms. White's desk word and spit out several printed sheets. She looked over them and occasionally kept referring to the application form that I had filled out downstairs. "I know you have not had lunch, Mr. Johnson, so would you like to accompany me to the restaurant next door? The big rush should just about be over, so we should be able to get a table. Let me take these with me." She gathered up all the papers she had held and put them in a folder. As she got up from her desk, she said, "This will be Dutch." I'm not allowed to buy lunch for a prospective employee or an existing employee. I nodded but said, "Yes, ma'am." Meddy White smiled broadly that I had answered her. The restaurant was a cross between a self-served cafeteria and a serving line. I chose a Cuban sandwich that a cafeteria worker put into the presser for me. I also bought a large iced tea. Upon sitting down, Ms. White said, "You have good manners, Mr. Johnson. You held every door. You had me precede you in the serving line, and finally you even seated me at the table. Manners are important, and I look for them in prospective employees. Your aptitude questionnaire says you would do well in our environment and that you would make a good team member as well as an eventual leader. You do not have any experience other than your military training and combat experience. You did not finish a degree in school, but you scored very high in the general knowledge area. which is usually only accomplished after finishing a degree program. Eat up, Mr. Johnson, and let me think about this. We ate leisurely without stuffing our food into our mouths and gulping it down. After wiping her mouth with her napkin and laying it on her plate, I asked, "Can I get us a cup of coffee, or would that make us late returning?" "That would be wonderful." "Black, please." And this is still part of the interview process. Back at the table, we were sipping our coffee when Ms. White began. "I'm reluctant to hire you as a general clerk as it is really boring. Plus, you have to deal with some unsavory people every day. I have need for a new person to help military people re-enter the workforce. But that position is posted requiring a degree in human resources. You recognize that you have to work to earn money to enjoy life, so you are more than halfway to getting a job. Now I just have to find a place for you." She drank some more of her coffee and said, "I need a temporary secretarial staff member for about 60 days. The permanent secretary is out on maternity leave. This position also requires substituting as an interview clerk to give breaks in the morning and afternoon. You will work 1 hour, giving 4 breaks in the morning, and 1 hour in the afternoon, giving 4 breaks. Then as well, I'll send you out to work with the window clerks a full day. Before you have to relieve anyone, if you work fast, you will finish 1 person at each substitution. The first few days, you will be longer trying to get the interview complete, but you will become quick very fast. The secretarial position requires some transcription, filling out forms, filing, answering calls for your immediate supervisor, and assisting your supervisor to fulfill their responsibilities. What do you think? Want to work as a secretary to see how you react to an office?" I didn't frown, but I must have had a sour look on my face. What would this temporary position pay? I'm sure it would be at least what unemployment pays, and I wouldn't have to go get food stamps. Temps begin at $12 an hour, with permanent secretarial and interview clerks earning up to $18 an hour. You will receive an extra $2 a day for working 2 hours at the window. That position pays $1 an hour premium. It didn't take me long to figure out I could live on the $480 a week, but I thought I could probably eventually find a better job. I needed to go to the VA hospital to get checked in and to get my health club membership for continued rehab. That would be a lifetime freebie. "Miss White, I will take your position and consider it temporary while I seek better employment. I need the job and you need the worker. I'm sure I will fulfill the responsibilities the job requires. I can start in the morning if you wish, but this afternoon I have to go to the VA to check in and to find a new gym for my rehab." "Good. Come to the back door by 7:50 in the morning and come to my office. I will have you sign your W-4 and we will get you started." We stood and I escorted her back to her door, going out to my pickup a little lighter on my feet. I would have a job to take up some slack on finances. I'd sure like to keep my little savings intact in case I need something for a rainy day. The VA experience was a total wait and see. It took an hour wait to get my interview and a new card, and it took another hour to get in to see the clerk who gave me a local lifestyle gym card. She said that if I would prefer Gold's Gym or the YMCA, I could switch, but lifestyles were all over the area and had a contract with the VA. When I finished, I found the employment office and asked for an application. After I filled it out, the clerk looked up my DD214 on the computer and said, "The only thing we have open right now is on the security team. I don't think you would qualify with your disability. They are regular policemen out here and have to do what a regular policeman does. I will keep your application and send it around. As you get other outside experience, come back and update your application." Okay, that was disappointing. A guy doesn't like to be told that you can't do something physically. Oh well, it was 5:15. Time to go home and have a beer. I parked the truck in front of the apartment and went into the stuffy place. I propped the front door open and opened the back door and the bedroom window. I checked the bike to make sure it was still there before I went to the fridge to get a beer. Thinking about it, I got out and went to Shirley's back door to bang on it. Before I knocked, I could see her at an ironing board working on a shirt. She had the radio on a country station listening to someone wail. I called out, "Hey, Shirley, want a beer?" She jumped, set the iron down, and hung up the shirt. She came out the back door and sat in a lawn chair pointing at another one sitting across from her. It took the whole beer to tell her what all I had done and that I was employed as of tomorrow morning. It wasn't a big wage, but it would do until I found something better. I figured if I was working at the employment office, I would have a lot of opportunity to find out about jobs. I would also have time to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Shirley was the smart one. As she asked, "What kind of clothes do you have to wear to this job?" My face must have told the story, as all I could remember was men in shirts and ties, and in one case, a guy in a dressy shirt without a tie. All had on decent slacks and dress shoes. Shirley said, "Come on, let's go up to the thrift store real quick to see if we can find some pants and shirts in your size. If they don't have anything, we'll still have time to run to Walmart for something." Shirley locked her place up, and I did the same, remembering to shut the bedroom window. The thrift store wasn't far and was about the same as the Goodwill, but bigger. Their hand-me-downs were not in as good a shape as those at the Goodwill, but it could have been because they were picked through faster. We did find 2 pair of slacks that fit and 3 dress shirts that were still nice. Plus, Shirley found some ties that were very nice. The shoe bin was just that. There were several bins of shoes, a bin for each size, but they were still pretty mixed up. I gave up after 15 minutes, saying that my military dress shoes will work. They're already shiny and are easy to clean up. Shirley had found a pair of jeans and a tank top for herself, along with another dress of the type she likes. I paid for everything and we headed back to the apartment. Shirley said she needed to get my stuff in the washer real quick, as the pants needed to be hung to dry. She had me get out of the clothes I wore today so she could wash them as well, so if I needed to, I could wear them in the morning. I started preparing dinner but was interrupted and told in a firm tone that she would be back soon to finish it. She suggested I have a beer and relaxed by watching TV or something. In the meantime, I put on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and followed her instructions. I opened a beer and sat down on the couch, flipping through the cable news. There wasn't much to watch, just the usual updates with the new president trying to withdraw from Iraq as quickly as possible to satisfy his supporters. I think he understands the importance of our presence there and that we should stay a bit longer, if for no other reason than to help the Iraqi army. Politics and war are exhausting. It's easy to ignore the significance of war when it's not directly affecting us. We tend to forget about the reasons behind it when it's far away, as long as we can still enjoy our daily comforts like lattes or the latest movies. After dinner, I asked Shirley if she was up for a trip to Jonas. She agreed, but mentioned she'd need to be back in about an hour and a half to get my clothes ready for the next morning. We rode down to Jonas and had a beer. The place wasn't too crowded, and Shirley and I actually got to play a game of pool. We had a second beer before heading home. It felt good to get out and ride for a bit. Back home, I washed up the dishes while Shirley busied herself with laundry or something in the back. Around 10 o'clock, she came in carrying my clean clothes on hangers. They looked good, almost like new. I thanked her and handed her a 10, asking if that was enough. She laughed and said, "Yep, $10, a good meal, and a warm place to sleep. Well, worth it." I chuckled. "So I'm the one doing favors now." She grinned. "Hey, I'm not complaining. Let me grab a shower. Be right back. Wait up for me." I locked up the front door, checked the lock on the bike, cracked open the bedroom window, and turned off most of the lights. I had just settled down in front of the TV when Shirley came back, wrapped in a robe with her hair up and a towel. We sat on the couch, watched TV, and I helped brush out her hair. After a while, she offered to give me a massage, but I said, "Let's just curl up and get some rest. You've had a long day with all that laundry." She nodded. "I've got a few more folks giving me clothes to wash. That'll help cover my bills. And since you're pitching in for food, I'm doing all right. If my Bubba decides to come home, though, it might throw off my routine. He usually shows up with a stash and sticks around until it's gone. I don't know why, but I care about him. Maybe one day he'll get it together." Shirley was resting with her head on my shoulder when I noticed her breathing shift. She had fallen asleep. I closed my eyes and followed her into rest. I was up at 6:30, showered, but ate a prepared breakfast before dressing in color-coordinated clothes Shirley handed to me. I tied the tie and checked out the stranger in the mirror. Some guy I didn't know. Shirley asked, "I have a key so I can clean this place up. You can give me $25 a week for housekeeping now that you have a job. That way I'll have your supper ready for you when you get home." Okay. She already had the key, but I was having some misgivings. Were we getting too close? Tom would tell. When I went to Miss White's office at 7:45, she said, Good morning, Mr. Johnson. May I call you Chad? I nodded. Then, after she looked at me, I smiled and said, Yes, ma'am. Okay, sign these papers and I'll show you where your desk is. Once Ms. White had the papers in the folder with my name on it, we went next to her office at a desk that up against her office wall. This will be where you will work most of the time. You will be answering the phone for me as well as the other normal secretarial duties. An older lady came in and sat at a desk just opposite mine. Ms. White said, Julie, I want you to meet Chad Johnson. Chad, Julie Preston. She is Miss Castle's secretary. When I'm unavailable for questions, Julie would be a great person to ask. Julie Preston at first had a scowl on her face, but was smiling from the compliment. Mrs. White said, I need to take you out to the counters and let you work with the girls out there today. You'll work out there all of today to learn the procedures. Tomorrow we'll go on a more regular schedule.